I was told that the sessions are wonderful. I missed attending many of these sessions. Many of the times we come to symposias and conferences not to give big talks but to learn. And I take it very seriously that I have missed wonderful opportunity of learning from many people here. But in next few minutes, I would like to share some information what I feel is very important as part of the process of meditation. So we always think and worry about that final part of meditation, but what takes us there is at times neglected. So I look at phases of meditation as the best way to mend your mind before you want to settle down in that final state of meditation. And I have a couple of slides to share that information with you. So my talk will be spread across some of these areas. I am sure many of you are experts in these, but I would like to put few different viewpoints, but I would like to also combine it with your views, whereby we can put them together. I always look at when you talk about mind, one thing comes to our mind. So we look at it as a mysterious something which we want to understand, but we have never understood that. So we always use these kind of phrases related to that. Generally, this is the only thing which we use it extensively, but honestly speaking, we don't know where it is. Okay, and similarly, human nature is in such a we have it in such a way that we know the best way to spoil this for others, but we don't know how to fix it. And at the same time, each one of us are very confident that I have a wonderful control over it, but without knowing that it is controlling us. And similarly, we always readily give lots of tips to other people, those who say that I have really a difficulty in managing my mind. But at times, we never listen to our own inner voice, which says that this is the way you have to manage your mind. So these are the common phrases which always knowingly we neglect, but at the same time, it's the relation to multiple activities what we do, and how we want to progress from a routine mundane life to a spiritual life, and how we want to really connect ourselves with lots of activities which we think can really benefit us or somewhere missed. I always look at our own ancient scriptures, and any yoga practitioner looks at them, which give a lot of insights for us to really make some detailed understanding of what we are talking about. Whenever you want to really talk about the mind, one thing what we take the shelter of is the Taittiriya Upanishad. Taittiriya talks about this concept of Panchakosha, and out of which there are two below and two above, and people always connect that Manomaya or the layer of the mental being as something which bridges the other two, which is Annamaya and Pranamaya on one side, and Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya on the other side. What actually drives us to move either upward or downward are these personality traits what we have, or what is called as gunas. So gunas actually work as precursors for all our actions. And of course, each one of us talk about stress, but in the scriptures, there are only 5 important factors which are given as stress producing factors. If you talk of mind, if you can deal with these 5 kleshas, which can deal with every action of yours, which will promote the elevation of your mind to progress in spiritual course. Commonly used terminology is chitta vrittis. Yoga talks extensively about it, but probably it's much more simpler thing than what we have made it as complicated thing. So in the simplest way, what we always understand it as an occupation of the mind. So each one of us have lots of occupations, but at given point of time we can do one of them. So similarly, mind has these several occupations, 5 of them, out of which it will be engaged in primarily in one with the help of others. One particular vritti I would like to emphasize is viparyaya. So because we always look at other vrittis including vikalpa, the 5 vrittis, pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, smriti. Viparyaya appears to be the root cause. So we generally correlate with some very bigger things like you see something, it creates an illusion, a physical thing looking differently as viparyaya. But it is much more profound. It contributes to every action of ours. Okay, and of course, when we talk about the phases of meditation, what really appeal to me are the chitta bhumis, the 5 different states which can help us to elevate ourselves from the lower one to higher one. I am going to give some examples very quickly. This is what I was talking about, the Panchakosha, taken from Panchakosha Viveka of Taittiriya Upanishad. It's so beautifully expressed and explained in Taittiriya. When a guru and Sishya, they are dialoguing, and the student asks the guru, can you please tell me, I want to understand what I am made out of. Okay, so then the guru will never give an answer, so he simply says that yeah, you have raised the most important question. Okay, so the best way to understand is go and do tapas. Okay, you go and do tapas, you will understand it to yourself. So the first thing what the student after doing tapas understands is that for doing anything, this is what is contributing. So I am made out of this physical body called Anna or Annamaya Kosha. So he goes back to his teacher and he says that, like the Archimedes said some time back, that yes, I found it. Okay, so then the teacher says, what is that? Yes, this physical body. Wonderful, you are on the right track. Please go back and do further tapas. So then he realizes that the physical body is there, but at the same time, if there is no energy or something called the subtle principle, okay, then the physical body has no existence. So then he comes back similarly and says that prana is what governs or guides this physical body. So similarly the story goes, and then he goes back and looks at beyond prana. I have prana, but at the same time, if the manomaya kosha is not intact and active, then I am not the person what I am. Okay, so lots of psychological issues it could be on a simpler side. Okay, for example, there's a patient of schizophrenia. Okay, so everything is there, but you are not with yourself when you are really consciously taking that decision what mind can do for you. So that's when these kind of concepts which can really give that kind of an indication. So then comes what actually guides that the layer of mind is that layer of intellect called Vijnanamaya Kosha. And of course, you are not supposed to stay there. And when the teacher asked him to go and do further research, the student never came back. Okay, so then actually the student and teacher, they are father and son. So then he really gets confirmed that yes, my son got the final answer when he never came back that point of time, because he understood that this whole thing is made out of ananda, or that state of bliss. Okay, we are all connected with this state of bliss, and our purpose is to get back to that state. Meditation is one such physical practice which we use to have that kind of an experience, okay, to have that state of physical experience of the state of ananda. But it is just an indication, okay. So these are all what Patanjali says. These are all some kind of trailers what you are going to see, okay. And as you progress in this path, you have the vibhutis which are coming to distract you more, okay. So you will get some special abilities, special powers, etc. And then if you get stuck with that, then you will once again you won't reach your final goal. So having said that, it's so beautifully illustrated that it is not as we see as small individual or as a person physically, but it is something much bigger. Similar concepts are taken from the Jain and Buddhist philosophy, where you talk about an individual and the universal being. So it was of course one shloka summarizes everything. When somebody asks that, okay, from where did I come? So it is said that you have come from that universal being. Okay, I have come from there, and then now a part of me is here. That means a part of me is missing there. So is this something like that? That's when this well-known shloka, which talks about Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnas Mudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. So this is Purna, this is complete from where you have come. From there when you have come, and you are also Purna. You are not the bit of that, but you are also complete of that, okay. So but when you take from this bit from there, does that mean that something is missing there? Purnasya Purnam Adaya, okay, like 1 minus 10 is 9, okay, in mathematics. But here it is never like that. It is Purnameva Avashishyate. So Purna only remains there. So that's what the kind of an understanding what was given to us to really use the techniques to have that experience. Meditation is one of that what we are talking, but it takes us quite deep in there. I just wanted to, many of you, this doesn't belong to me, this one video belongs to Google. I wanted to just give you, many of you might have seen it, as part of the experience. When somebody made this video very nicely, we believe that I am everything, and when you are taken to a bigger space, what happens to you as an individual or the entity can be much easily understood, which is spoken so well in our philosophy. So we think we have everything here. I am from a place, I am from a country, I am from a planet. But when you move out of that, you start becoming once again a particle, okay. And when you go much beyond that, even that particle disappears, okay. So this is truly taking you to that concept of Purna. So that doesn't mean that I am not there, okay. I am very much part of this Purna, whatever has been constituted, which can be few thousands of light years ahead. But what is important to understand is, finally when you reach a point, what remains is only once again that particle, that packet of energy. This whole thing is made out of this one particle called that energy, okay. So if we think this is what is there outside for us and we contribute for this, and when you actually come back, you will just realize exactly the same thing is there inside, okay. It is no different what you see outside and what you see inside, okay. So now if you make your inward journey, Okay, as what exactly we end up can be seen in much more simpler simulated way. Okay, so we think when we go outer it is bigger, when we think when we go inward it is smaller, but finally what you see is that packet of energy called a quark. Okay. So basically what we are trying to understand with this is the detailed concept what has been explained thousands of years back. We always need some kind of a physical experience. Okay, so physical experience gives us an evidence to say that yes, this is something which I can believe, something I can take forward. Adding to that, what also really attracted me long back was the description given by Shankara, Adi Shankaracharya. So we are all interested in knowing more about the mind. Okay, there cannot be better description of the constituents of the mind and also what regulates them. So it is summarized only in these 4 parts. Okay, and once again this story is very interesting. When Shankara was asked that what you are made out of, his answer came in such a way that I am not made out of any of these. Okay, that was so beautiful. Mano buddhi ahankara chittani nam, the Nirvana Shataka what Shankara has given. But what is important here is we give a lot of importance to manas. Okay, and we'll hear lots of stories about chitta. In yoga, when you talk, there is chitta vritti, there is chitta vikshepa, there is chitta bhumi, there are lots of things to do with your chitta. We all get confused with this. Is manas and chitta are different, and what is guided and governed or regulated by your buddhi and ahankara, or one actually governs the other one. When you really look at this overall perspective, what in a simpler way we can understand is chitta is something like the functional unit with lots of attributes. So these attributes what we connect with the functioning activity and several performances what you actually want to do in your day-to-day life. So that's where we look at these other governing principles, mainly the gunas what I was talking about. However, balanced certain things are, but there are some inherent qualities. So these actually determine an individual's ability to really cope with such demanding situations. So tamas, rajas, sattva are the 3 qualities described in yoga as gunas, and tamas is the latent guna which always keeps you to the lower instincts, and rajas is that active principle, while sattva is the balanced principle. When we really want to look at how sattva, tamas and rajas can also be manipulated in its functioning with other principle, as I was mentioning, these 5 really emerge as the key factors. Okay, we call them as the kleshas. These are also related to the stress producing factors. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha are the ones which are mentioned. Avidya, of course there are several connotations for avidya, the way people express it. Amongst several other things, I look at avidya as ignorance. Okay, so this is the ignorance principle of avidya which actually contributes to the stress in us. Of course, you know it very well, Asmita. The Raga and Dvesha are the three strong friends, okay, and they determine how your whole process, your mental activity can be facilitated. Abhinivesha is less understood or less factor which is given less importance compared to other factors. But I look at Abhinivesha as one of the very important factor. People also relate Abhinivesha to fear of death, but the simplest way of understanding is fear of change. Each one of us have this fear of change, Abhinivesha, which actually makes us be anxious all the time, okay, and the influence of it results in lots of symptomatology, okay. So what you see as chitta vikshepas are those symptoms which are under the influence of your kleshas, what body can suffer, okay. So what you call it as the vyadhisthana samshaya pramada alasya avarati, and of course bhanti darshana alabdha bhumi tattva. Basic, if you want to look at it, all starts at one point, okay, keeping all other factors as external factors. One factor, if you want to really look at, is the speed, okay, speed of your thought process, okay, the speed of your functioning at the mental level. It can come from any of the previous kleshas, as I mentioned. It can come from the inherent qualities what you have, the gunas, and it can also be a result of your the strong likes and dislikes what you develop. One shloka summarizes this whole process. I am sure many of you are familiar with this particular shloka, which comes from Bhagavad Gita. If you really want to understand how the process of stress manifests in an individual, this shloka summarizes everything, which says that dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho vijayate krodhod bhavati sammoha sammoha smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat buddhinasha buddhinashat pranashyate. As simple as repeated dwelling upon, repeated thinking about any one given object makes the beginning of this whole process. That develops an attachment with that. I will always give this example. Who uses this the best? Okay, the advertisement industry. Okay, because one advertisement comes. Okay, I have this next which talks about the modern day understanding of the previous shloka, what is called as perseverative cognition. These are the images what probably the advertising industry uses. So the first advertisement comes, you look at it. Then the second advertisement comes, probably you focus on, oh, there are 3 cameras in this. The third advertisement comes, then you start looking at that symbol and few other features of it. Then they know that beyond that you don't see this, just a photo of it. Then they put so many videos into social media and other places whereby the second level of influence can be made on you. Every advertisement industry, consciously or not consciously, uses this principle of you have a weakness called dhyayato vishayan pumsa. So that exploitation is done successfully by the industry, okay, and the yoga industry is trying to reverse it. What we are trying to do is, it's okay, we are all human beings, you get carried away by this principle called dhyayato vishayan pumsa. Now what we do is, we are all bound to get exposed to such attractions. So, but how do you regulate yourself so that you don't go into the next level of attachment? Attachment is also not a problem. Attachment leads to desire. Okay, the possessiveness comes only there. When the desire is not fulfilled, the natural outcome is anger. Okay, I am angry. I want to buy something, I am not able to buy, and then I am really frustrated about myself. Then slowly the whole cognitive processes, mental faculty get affected because of this. And this has been wonderfully explained. And there are lots of skills developed in the recent time in understanding how perseverative cognition can influence an individual decision making, an individual's actual functioning day to day, etc. As I was mentioning, we are looking at cognition as one of the important areas. Another vritti which gets much more easily influenced is this viparya, which I was talking earlier. Viparya, once again, is quoted, and people go through that when you talk about chitta vrittis. I have some different understanding, which honestly some of the great yoga masters have developed. Doesn't belong to me, these ideas. I am just presenting it to them. It said that viparyo mithyajnanam atadrupa pratishtam. I mean, you get established in this wrong cognitive idea, okay, illusionary idea. How do you relate it to our day-to-day activity? I am interested a little more into healthcare, so also as Dr. Sonika was mentioning that geriatric medicine is my special interest. I love working with elderly people. So two conditions which affect them very badly. Okay, one is cancer, another is partly autoimmune disorders and immunity related issues, apart from physical aging related neurodegenerative conditions. In all these conditions, two things happen. So what I have put here as body starts identifying friends as enemies. Okay, so that probably is the base for the condition what even we don't have an answer today is autoimmunity. So from where is this whole confusion starting in your body? Okay, so is it a weakness? Is it a health issue? Absolutely not. The consciousness what you talk, that's why I showed that picture, that video, though it was not something related to yoga. What you talk of the consciousness outside is there very much inside. So people are bothered about what happens at a systemic level when there is a health problem. But what we are talking here is cellular consciousness. Okay, so at a cellular level, when there is a confusion, that's when it starts influencing the cellular mechanisms. A lot of work is being done. I'm going to explain some of it to you. And second condition is considering enemies as friends. So something close to that idea is the cancer. Okay, so your immune system starts negating the idea and it starts cooperating with your cancer cells in the body. So this is where the whole idea of viparya, which you can translate in a, of course this is just a cartoon of the same idea, that this is a family and suddenly one fine day when the member comes from in the evening from outside, whole family members start treating that person as an intruder. Okay, so this happens to our body cells, and this is where we start having lots of issues. And what triggers this is that the component of the concept of viparya there. Is it only in the ancient texts kind of it? So I was very happy. I follow the Nobel laureates very frequently. These are the Nobel laureates who got their Nobel Prize in 2018 for medicine. They worked on a wonderful concept which I can relate very strongly with viparya. Okay, so the two principles I was talking, one person has been awarded Nobel Prize for the work what he has done on immune system working as accelerator, whereas the second person has been given the Nobel Prize for working on the brake system of immune system. What we were talking of, treating enemies as friends and treating friends as enemies. In one place you have to accelerate. For example, like your immune system has said that all are my friends, I don't need to go and fight with them. Okay, so line of control is there, allow everybody to come in, so then you know what happens in your country. So same thing happens here, and probably that's what the strong component which is taken to really work on these accelerators and brakes of immune system, primarily working on cancer. Amazing work, because I was looking at lots of the earlier work of these people. Really they are very strongly connected philosophically. Okay, probably they are not talking of Vipareya, but they have these concepts very strongly connected in their research what they have done. And when we also look at these components of ancient knowledge supporting modern scientific research, we always connect it with mostly with the mind. Okay, we bring it to psychosomatics. Okay, we either say that it's all at a place where we know the influence of it on the body. Okay, I can study the influence of it on the body, but I truly don't know what it is doing. Okay, that's where we are at the point of time. This is where these basic definitions come very handy. Okay, so if you pick the fundamental definition of meditation from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which says that Tatra Pratyaya Ekatanata Dhyanam. See, what we always do is we just translate it and use the meaning of it. But each one of these words have profound, strong meaning to it. Okay, and what actually we are not looking generally is when you read the state of meditation. Okay, what happens as a functional entity. Okay, once again described so well as samyama. Okay, so all the three processes merge together to make it one process. Okay, so for example, you are listening to me. Okay, so when you are listening to me, there are three things involved in it. So your sensory organ, okay, and the sound which you are receiving it, okay, that's the object, what is giving you that kind of sensory information, and the process of hearing. Okay, imagine when you are listening to a beautiful music. Without your knowledge, all these three processes merge. You don't know what is happening, what it is, but you are just in that bliss. You go to a beautiful place, there is a sunset. Without your knowledge, you are lost. So lost is not, you are not in the present. Lost is these three processes merge together to give you that experience of meditation, which is very important. And many times, for getting that experience, we are dependent on objects. We are dependent on something external. That's where we get sucked, because we never learn the methodology to remain there, but we always start from the beginning. Each time when I have to do meditation, unless you are a very, very senior meditator who know how to switch on and switch off, you spend maximum amount of your time in the initial processes. That's what I wanted to give you an idea, but the same has been depicted in multiple ways outside India and many other places. This is just one expression of it. There are several expressions how meditation is classified or meditation is grouped under. Okay, two of the very well-known classifications are the focused attention based activity and of course open awareness based activity, so also called as concentrative and mindfulness based activities. There are hundreds of meditation techniques, okay, and some are classified under one while some others are classified under other. There are combination of them, Okay, not necessarily either they have to fit into this or this, but it can have the combination of one or more of them. Okay, so there are lots of techniques used under these which are very well documented. Okay, so under it is my own classification of putting concentrative under dharana type. Okay, if there is anything that somebody doesn't agree with that, I take the blame. Don't worry about it, it's my own classification. So why I put it under dharana type is because of the techniques which are used to define this concentrative type of meditation. So either you use a mantra, repeating a phrase or a sound, etc., or you use a visualization involving a picture, etc., or fix a goal and be focused on that, or also you bring your attention on the body part, okay, focusing on a particular area or sensation in the body, or gazing at a candle, or using your mala based, bead based repetition of a particular mantra. And of course, it's also mentioned that you can also focus on the sound, etc. Whereas lots of other descriptions are put under the open awareness, also put under mindfulness based practices. So here all experiences once again are perceived as they happen. So here there is no intense focusing on any given given activity, but it is effortless being in that activity. Okay, you are not doing an activity. So the basic difference between the concentrative and the open monitoring, or the dharana type and the dhyana type, is that you have that effort involved in holding on to that object. But in dhyana, you are there, but you drop that effort. That's the effortless being. So lots of different mechanisms you use here. I want to move from here to Indian understanding of the phases of meditation. Okay, this is what something very interesting to really understand. If you really want somebody to take them in to meditation, naturally they make a beginning somewhere here. Okay, each one of us have to fit in somewhere over here. So we fit in either in these a mind which is very dull, filled with tamasic roots. Then you have something which is restless, called kshipta mind. Then there is a next phase which is vikshipta, where there is it oscillates between a little bit of a focus and a little bit of restlessness. Then you have the phase called ekagra mind, where you bring the attention on focus on an object of focus. And of course the last one, niruddha, is fully concentrative mind. So once again, concentrative doesn't mean that you are once again doing with attention. Okay, so once again it takes you to the higher states of meditative experience, where you leave that effort. This actually goes something like this. If you can put the Chitta Bhumis overlap with Patanjali Yoga Sutras of moving towards Samadhi, so it fits in somewhere like this, where each one of us start from a phase called Chanchalata. So from Chanchalata we go to Vikshiptata, where your mind is helping you a little bit to have an experience, but it takes you back. Then you bring it back, it goes back. Okay, so that's when you say that, come on, don't play with me, enough is enough, now I want to do my meditation. Okay, that's when you bring the ekagrata. So, and the effort to bring the awareness onto one point. Whereas the next phase is intense focusing, which is dharana. And of course dhyana is the expanded state of being, and of course sayama is this. I want to give you, because my focus was on the process of meditation, which can actually mend our mind. I wanted to spend a little more time on this. This is what exactly the importance given to each one of these. Okay, so when your mind is in the state of muda, so that's when it is at its peak of laziness. Okay, if you get a person with that state and try to give him meditation, naturally what happens is he gets into sleep. Okay, so somebody says that very lazy fellow, but says that I won't get sleep. You tell them that come, I'll teach meditation. Okay, so they'll get into sleep. On a lighter note, don't take me seriously. Second thing is chanchalata, where here the thoughts overpower. Okay, the thoughts overpower the flow of your mind. Okay, mind can occupy one particular activity, as I said. So your thoughts actually give the direction. Whether I have to be in pramana, I have to follow viparya, I have to go to vikalpa, or I go to nidra, or I go to cognitive processes through smriti. Of course, vikshipta, where that's when you have occasional distractions, but that's the beginning point which can help you to make a process of moving in direction of meditation. Ekagra is, that's when you start developing an ability to focus. Okay, and dharana is the ability to do intense focusing, one pointed focusing. Dhyana, alertful state of rest with expansion, and of course ultimate merger. If you really want to say what governs it, as I mentioned, tamas. Okay, and here there are lots of activities at your brain level gets compromised. Okay, so one very well-known process is lower cognitive functioning during that phase, and that's why it is said you get up early in the morning if you want to study. Okay, so many people we have classified ourselves into early risers and what is the other one?
Late sleepers.
Okay, so what happens is somebody who likes sleeping late in the morning, you wake them up, it never works, and they say that no, I cannot focus, and when I get up I am in drowsy state, I will never memorize anything. Okay, whereas on the other way, if there is somebody early riser, if you allow this person to study little late in the night, hold the book, in another 15 minutes they are out. Okay, really the gunas determine and make us work in a particular way. It's an indication. Gunas are not the decision makers, it's an indication saying that come on, you have this weakness, you better overcome it. Okay, but what we do is we take it granted and we say that no, this is my nature, I cannot get up early in the morning, I do yoga in the evening. Okay, so it is talking to you. Okay, your inner voice is talking to you and telling you this is what you need to do, because probably you are missing something. So of course this is very interesting, chanchalata. This is where all of us enjoy most of the time. Okay, so if there is nothing to do, smartphone is the best thing, because there is no best supporter for chanchalata than your smartphones. Okay, because in one WhatsApp message you get totally different idea. In the next WhatsApp message it takes you to another world. A third WhatsApp message will make you depressed. A fourth WhatsApp message will make you, oh come on, it's such a wonderful idea. Instantaneous. Okay, so chanchalata is that state where I wanted to emphasize on these few factors, like multiple thoughts on multiple subjects. Okay, because when I go to the next one I want to emphasize on the same thing, so it is featured by lots of other things. When you look at lots of practices, these are I started putting some evidence for you under each one of these categories. So there are some studies done in looking at something called non-directive meditation. Okay, so where it takes you to, it is a free-flowing meditation. As the Chanchalata takes you, you are free to follow it. Okay, so but what exactly happens when you do that? So you, as expected, probably there is global activation in the brain. Okay, because there are thoughts concerning different areas of the brain which can actually give that kind of a stimulation what is needed. If you look at the second Vikshiptata, so this is where you make a shift between multiple subjects to a single subject. It is a shift, you are not moved completely. So the first one you had multiple subjects and multiple thoughts. In Vikshiptata you have made a shift from multiple subjects to single subject. It's Ekagrata, that's where you actually move to multiple thoughts on a single subject. Okay, so this is the phase, how it is so well designed for us to move in the process of meditation. For example, now when you come into this room, you have multiple thoughts on multiple subjects. When you come inside, if the talk is on everything to do with the mind, so the first thing what happens is your thoughts, all disturbing thoughts are pushed away, and you start encouraging all thoughts related to mind. Okay, so that's what exactly you do in Ekagrata. So there are once again multiple thoughts, but it's all on one subject. Okay, you know the best examples. Ekagrata, it is a simple way of attraction. Okay, there are multiple thoughts, but suddenly something attracts you and you get engrossed with that. Okay, nowadays we don't travel much in train. I used to love traveling in train in India. Okay, so when you travel in train, what used to happen was in a one bogie, you are sitting on this side and there are so many people sitting on the other side. You don't know who is sitting the other side. You are busy talking, they are busy talking. One something interesting area, what they are talking really attracts your attention. The minute your attention is drawn, then whatever is happening in front of you, you are not aware of it. You are trying to listen what is that next you said on the other side of it. See, this is a natural process. From Chanchalata you can move to Vikshiptata and then to Ekagrata. And of course the important phase is, this we had done some studies. Okay, so to look at really, are there any differences between the phases of meditation compared to Chanchalata? These are some of the functional MRI images as part of the study what we have done. If you really look at Chanchalata versus Ekagrata, so what exactly is probably happening? It looks like there is an increased activation in couple of areas which are all to do with attentional processes, be it anterior cingulate, okay, and middle temporal gyrus. So that's where you are actually putting the switch on to say that yes, all those circuits related to attention, I want them to be the best. Okay, when you are doing this kind of an activity. There are few studies which are done looking at similar areas, and they have found quite similar results compared to what I was trying to say. The other two important areas, as I was mentioning, were Dharana and Dhyana. So Dharana is the place where you have one pointed focusing. Okay, there is single thought on single subject. Okay, there are not even two thoughts for you to focus. So here what happens probably is there is an actual filter put at the brainstem level to avoid unnecessary sensory information coming to your brain. Okay, and of course there is heightened cognitive information processing in the brain, and this is where there is an extension of this process of inhibition happening in the brain. We are all interested in looking at when you are doing meditation, dharana or dhyana, whatever it is, which part of the brain is active. But it's so beautiful. I mean, putting all fMRI or any other studies together, what I can understand is more than activating, putting on lights in the brain, what it is doing is putting off. Okay, so what brain does is, first it switches off many of the lights which are not relevant. Okay, then it brings in that focus for you to do the activity what is needed. Okay, and the same can be seen here. This is what we always relate. Okay, when do you need dharana? Not just in meditation. You want to really do that utmost focusing act to really perform the best, you have to do this dharana. Okay, for example, the shooters, okay, or those who do archery, if they have to win that gold medal, what is needed is that unperturbed single flow. Okay, it's like from top you are just releasing a drop of water. How it comes as single connected dot, though they are separate ones, your flow of thought should be like that. Then absolute no distraction, it goes and hits. Okay, so I had the opportunity of interviewing some of the cricket team people, because we work with the Sports Authority of India as well as BCCI. So one such person was this Irfan Pathan. Okay, so when I was asking him, so you have 6 balls in a over, and every ball, when do you decide that I want this particular result? Okay, I am going to bowl this Yorker, I am going to make this as a knuckleball, I am going to do this. What he said was very interesting. That last second when I release that ball, that's when I make the decision. I will have 2-3 choices in my mind, but the decision is made in that last second when I release my ball. Okay, so similarly, we had the opportunity of course, I come from Karnataka, so there are players like KL Rahul, unfortunately going through some bad time now. So I had the opportunity of interacting with him. So I was asking him, what is actually troubling you? So what he said was exactly the same feature. I am not able to do dharana. Okay, he didn't tell that. I am relating it. But what he said was that exactly that minute I have to take a decision to hit the ball or to leave the ball, I am not able to make that decision. Okay, so this is where you get lots of these insights, and this is that comparison which talks to you about the initiation of global inhibition. Okay, in the brain, as I was talking, more than activation, what we can really appreciate is the inhibition component of it. Of course, you have all those areas, dorsolateral, prefrontal, anterior cingulate, etc., connected with your attentional processes are very much active during this phase, and of course lots of mantra based. And the last one is your dhyana. So this is where the state of the mind you are in is full of relaxation, yet filled with alertness. Okay, and there is state of expansion, and you are defocused yet you are absorbed, and there is selective activation and generalized inhibition of multiple areas of the brain, particularly looking at higher brain functions. This is some indication for you of this comparison between Chanchalata and of course dhyana. It is not limited to brain, as we were talking about from where this inhibition or activity taking place. We said the brainstem level. A few studies what we have done looking at the autonomic functions in these different types of meditation, which probably can fit into either dharana type or to dhyana type. There is one common feature, there is reduced metabolism, okay, reduction in oxygen consumption. At the same time, there are two distinct features what you can see, both looking at somewhere the increased sympathetic activity. One looking at increased heart rate, while the other looking at increased vasoconstriction, cutaneous vasoconstriction. So this is quite common with several other meditation techniques what we have studied. Okay, so at a basal level, it brings in extraordinary amount of relaxation. But at external level, where you use an faculty to operate, there will be differences across these meditation techniques like heart rate or blood flow or something else. So we always worry about these because we cannot relate it to everyone, because most of these studies are done in experienced meditators, experienced practitioners. Okay, so because we have this issue, can everyone do meditation? Okay, so there are two commonalities observed. So one is if you put people, one group, the tamasic group, they go to sleep. There is Rajasic group, they are also not doing meditation, but they get super engaged with their thoughts. Okay, so that's why in conditions like schizophrenia, we tell people that avoid giving them any focused meditation techniques based on thoughts, because they are the amazing individuals who can get engaged so well with their own thoughts. So this is what basically the problem wise we face. Then there is another technique called cyclic meditation. Yeah, that's what I was. Okay, so this is cyclic meditation where we have the combination of it. So where you have the dharana phase as well as the dhyana phase. So there are lots of these to say about sympathetic activation on one side, at the same time heightened cognitive functioning looked by the P300 etc. in these individuals. So that's why we look at these individuals looking at practicing cyclic meditation. Okay, so basically what it we can summarize is that probably dhyana phase of meditation can reduce the cortical activity based on features taken from evoked potentials on one side and lots of other variables on the other side. So these are just some indications of the same features for you apart from what we have done, and the application of meditation. It is not limited to just one relaxation or activity, but you can have the application into areas like altruism, emotional management, etc. And I was mentioning that the special abilities recorded in senior practitioners was started from some experiments like this done in All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi, where they demonstrated an unusual exceptional feat like bringing your cardiac function to a straight line. So there were several of these studies published, and these are not published in regular journals like Circulation, American Heart Journal, including Nature, which gives us an indication that these are the areas which you should look. And one important feature is that no major difference was observed between the genders, okay, male and female. I want to end with this. Is it so important to understand the impact of meditation without giving importance to the experience quotient of it? I put this image and asked many people, imagine there is a great Buddhist monk doing meditation here. If I put him in my laboratory, can he produce the same meditation session compared to what he was doing here? The answer is yes and no. Yes, because if he is not experienced, he will never do that because of whatever I have put on him. Answer is yes, because if he is experienced, nothing actually, it's a process of inward journey. the minute he decides to go inward, nothing matters to him. So we have experience of this, and I'm happy to share that majority of the publications come from meditation research. In yoga, I'm talking about 60% of them have come from meditation only, and this is one thing which I wanted to mention, that yes, Vyasa University has the credential of bringing around 10% of the world literature from this one university itself on yoga. Okay, so I end with this, and this is the question what we always ask, that who is ruling you? Okay, but if you remember these three guys, you know to whom you want to give your control to. Okay, and yoga has these mechanisms. Of course, this is just a connecting brain and mind, and this is what I always like saying, that while in the midst of daily life, yet detached, through the practice of meditation, one can ever live in blissful happiness, taken from Shiva Samhita. Thank you very much.